Hello, welcome back. Last week, I released a video talking about AI in the music industry, and the video itself was focused on shining a light on irresponsible uses of AI. You know, people stealing original content, running it through an AI generator, and then passing it off as their own. As well as this, I spoke about people yoinking existing songs to genre bend en masse. And yeah, the response to that video was super interesting. People were weighing in with their own anecdotal evidence, and the comments and discussion points were really great to see. I highly recommend you check out that video before you watch this one. This is sort of a part 2 follow-up. Now, this response led me further down a rabbit hole this week, especially with commenters that were bringing up points that I hadn't really covered in the first video. And so I continued my research, and instead of this video being used to clown on more idiots mass-producing rubbish, there will be a follow-up video where I talk about it a little more, because believe me when I say it, there are many of them kicking about out there. I want to use this time to consider whether there are any acceptable uses of AI within music creation. And after presenting my thoughts, this will lead me on to my opinions on the following question. Is the music industry doomed because of AI? The short answer is no. And I'll get onto that and expand it in just a moment. I absolutely stand by everything I said in the previous video. If you are someone that takes original human-made content to run through an AI generator to pass off as your own, that is morally wrong. You shouldn't be doing that. I also don't agree with people taking existing songs to genre bend in the way that people are doing at the moment. If we think about AI-generated songs, they appear often so surface level. They don't come close to the human emotional attachment that you can get when you listen to a piece of human-made media. And at this present day, there are many examples of AI-generated music that sounds really convincing, and you may have found yourself fooled in the past. But I think there is that whole point where when you stop and listen properly, is this stuff actually any good? Now, a quick tangent time, and this will lead me on to my thoughts later in the video. This week, I watched a TED Talk given by Dustin Ballard. Now, you may not be familiar with his name or face, but if you spend any time at all within sort of the music scene on social media, then chances are you've probably come across some of his work. He is the man behind There I Ruined It. Now, what Dustin does is he combines his vocal and instrumental performances with AI-trained software to create parody songs, mashups, if you will. Now, this isn't really something I'd considered or covered in the previous video, you know, people using AI for comedic and entertainment purposes. But the key thing I took away from Dustin's TED Talk was a point that he made when it came to assessing whether a particular AI method in music creation is acceptable. And boiled down, he asks himself 3 questions. And if the questions come back as a pass, then he sort of concludes whatever AI method was used, it could be considered more acceptable. The first question is this content deceptive? What I mean by this is the piece of media being presented to me designed to make me believe that someone made this? Immediately thinking back to the examples last week, none of them passed this question. These videos were stolen and presented as if they were the original thing. The next question is there artistic intent? Now, this is a more nuanced question to try and answer, because you can very quickly fall into ruts of giant unanswerable questions like, you know, what is the point of making art in general? But that aside, if you can tell that there is some form of artistic intent there, then I'm inclined to say fair enough. Going back to last week's examples, the fellow that we found that was genre bending songs en masse and then spewing them into the ether, you could make the argument that the artistic intention there is vague at best and non-existent at worst. Instead of artistic intent, we're looking at financial intent. Now, on top of this point, it's worth keeping in mind that at present, roughly speaking, we have over 50,000 songs being generated per day using programs like Suno. Now, I'm speculating here because, of course, there are exceptions to this. You know, a human producing 20 albums a year is sort of clinically insane, but for the case of, say, Buckethead, that's just a random Tuesday for him. But mass-producing slop for streaming sites to harvest the streams and playtime gives you an idea as to the mentality of the people behind these prompts. And the final question is, does this hurt human musicians? Once again, backtracking to last week with videos such as this, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but you could make the argument that this AI-generated version of the original piece is potentially taking a revenue chunk out of the original artist's pocket. Granted, like I said, I have no way to prove this with exact numbers, but I think my point of the principle of stealing other people's art for your own AI gain is wrong. So what happens then if I come across a piece of music that has utilized AI in a particular way that passes those 3 questions? Now, as much as I am obviously against irresponsible use of AI, I know, a crazy opinion to have, there are ways that AI can be utilized to massively improve a musician's quality of life. And to explore this point a little bit further, I want to talk about my own personal experience with using tools like this. For years now, AI has been used as sort of the backbone to power tools such as stem splitters. Essentially, you take an existing song, you run it through the stem splitter, and it EQs out the vocals, the instrumentals, the drums, the bass for you to take and then use in your own projects. This is something I've dabbled with in the past, and I have been very open about my usage in those videos. I will leave them in the description for you to check out. But it's a tool that has been developed so far that DAWs are now implementing these sort of tools in-house within the app. I mean, for example, the most recent edition of Logic brought out its own stem splitter tool that, users can use. Now, I know that stem splitting is technically something that you can do manually. It is a laborious task, but it is possible. But I'll be the first to admit that using these stem splitter tools in the past made my life a hell of a lot easier. So to decide whether this is acceptable, let me ask those three aforementioned questions. Is it deceptive? In this instance, no. I have been and continue to be incredibly transparent about my use of these tools. In the videos where I gave a breakdown as to how I made it, it was the first thing that I mentioned within those videos. And so because of that, I'm going to give that a pass. The second question, what is the artist's intent? This is a weird question in this instance because the splitter tool isn't the final product, which is also the reason why I think it's a pass. The splitter tool is speeding up a laborious human process, which is contributing to a human-made piece of music. The splitter isn't center stage here though, so that's why I think this is a pass. And finally, are musicians hurt in this process? No, I don't think so. Whilst a few years ago I found myself on the YouTube Partner Program thanks to this video just blowing up for no reason, I have since lost my place on the partnership platform due to lack of activity back then. Whoops. So regardless of if YouTube had allowed me to monetize these videos, I have not earned a single penny from any of my rock covers where I used splitter tools. If we take the videos I made a few years ago where I made rock covers of songs written by Aries, I haven't taken a chunk out of his revenue stream at all. In fact, I'd go as far to say that I'm not even dragging his audience away from his original content because the videos themselves were designed with his audience in mind that were already familiar with the songs that he was making. So because of that, I'm going to give this a pass. So there we go. That's an example of an AI-powered tool that I don't think is unacceptable. Again, though, please leave your thoughts in the comments below. I want to start another discussion. It's really interesting hearing your viewpoints instead of just mine as I speak into the ether. So then, the million-dollar question, is the music industry doomed because of AI? No. No, it's not. Simply put, the presence of AI has moved the goalposts slightly. Whether you like or loathe AI within the music space, we can't deny that it is powerful. It is capable of creating some really convincing stuff that is starting to make its way into mainstream charts, as well as generate a huge amount of revenue for the person that prompted it. However, there are people using these tools more responsibly. You have people like There I Ruined It, who's using it to manipulate his own vocal and instrumental performances for comedic effect. You have people using AI-powered tools such as stem splitters to then create more human-led content. And of course, you still have the melts out there that are mass-producing rubbish and spewing it all over the internet. You may be in a position where you are a small artist and you think AI coming into the industry has raised the barrier of entry. And if you have this opinion, then I cannot recommend this video enough. VenusTheory summarizes the thoughts that I share with him in such a brilliant way that I'm not even going to attempt to paraphrase because the video he made is just so tight, I don't want to weigh in there. But I agree with everything VenusTheory thinks, so go and watch that video and then come back here. But if we take the broad picture into consideration here, AI within the music industry will have its chapter, just like every other technological development that at one point was thought to be the thing that would end the music industry. And lo and behold, even though we've had many technological advances, it hasn't happened. And I don't think it's going to happen here. Yes, there is behavior that is concerning and worrying, and I stand by everything I said in the first video, but realistically, if you are a musician creating art, immediately you are ahead of the game. You have something that no robot can ever hope to replicate. No matter how good AI-generated music may sound, AI has never written from experience. It has never experienced trauma and lived through things that allow it to sing from the heart. All AI is doing is using a bank of reference material, which, as it turns out, has been suspiciously gathered from existing media, to produce something that it thinks you want to hear. Now, it's important to note at this stage that at no point in my previous video was I doom-mongering. It's simply something that many of you pointed out in the previous video that us musicians are just going to have to adapt to and continue cracking on with. As long as you have the self-awareness to know that your music that you are creating is good, there will be an audience out there that resonates with what you're making. If you keep at it, remain consistent, your brand will grow. Yes, AI is able to produce music at an alarming great. But that really shouldn't stop you if you have a story to tell. If anything, I think the rise of AI will just cause a shift into how the music industry works. If we go back in time in 10-year increments, the industry alone has operated at wildly different paces and using wildly different methods. Okay, from this date, we go back to 2016. TikTok is basically nowhere to be seen. It doesn't have the draw on the global market that it has today. Artists are using social media, but not in the same way that it's being used today. You go back another 10 years, we're in 2006 now. YouTube is a video dating site. Facebook is in its infancy. And different strategies are being used to drive the music industry forward. There is emphasis on securing a record deal, being able to go into a studio to record your music, and then taking it out on tour to promote ticket sales and merch sales. And a lot of this sounds familiar because 20 years on, that is still being pushed today. I mean, look, if we go back to before internet times, the music industry looked different again. You know, the mark of a successful artist before the internet was simply, do you have a record deal? If you don't, good luck. You have all of these technological advancements and method changes, but at each step, you still have artists that crack on sharing their art in their own way. Hell, cameras have existed for well over 100 years, and yet there are still people out there that love painting landscapes. Just because the camera can capture a landscape in a fraction of the time doesn't mean you can't paint it. New technology like AI doesn't necessarily make the old stuff obsolete. There is no rule to say that you can't just continue cracking on with whatever methods that you're already using. This is the only point that I'll take from the VenusTheory video, but if your is interesting to an audience, it doesn't matter how you get there. So as I've said, AI is simply going to move the goalposts a bit. If your art is good, then you don't need to worry. Whilst we will always have Muppets that take the piss, steal content and profit from it, legislation will catch up eventually. I mean, in the last 2 to 3 weeks alone, YouTube has done a major clampdown on AI-generated content channels, you know, sparking a wave of demonetization. And this is a point that I made in the previous video. Legislation has yet to catch up, but we are seeing it catch up in real time with what YouTube's doing at the moment. Will it spell the end of AI-generated content? Almost certainly not. But we're getting a step closer to sort of moderating it to mitigate the loss from people who are having their content stolen. I'll leave links to the videos that have helped me in my most recent deep dive rabbit hole in the description below. This topic is vast and I have more videos planned, including covering the infamous interview that Mikey Schulman did, the CEO of Suno, last year. So if you like this style of content, subscribe to stick around. As mentioned before, if you have any thoughts on this topic, then leave them in the comment section below. We had a really good discussion going in the previous video and I want to do that again. Aside from that though, thanks for watching. Goodbye.